Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's breakfast somewhere, so eat up. Welcome to Breakfast with Vinny. Food for thought. Take it easy, take it easy. And they love us already, David. Man. So today's a special day for me. I'm not even going to begin going on this curriculum vitae to introduce this man. It speaks for itself. He's probably penned more hits than I have grass in my yard. A consummate producer, performer, composer, arranger, someone who has made an indelible impact on the music industry, the great David Foster.
Hey.
Welcome. Thank you, David.
That was a great introduction. And I want to say before we get started, although we are started, and I'll only say this once, okay? I wanted to do this podcast for many reasons, but, I bugged you actually to do it because if somebody could say, pick one drummer for the rest of your life, it could only be one. It would be you. You are the greatest, in my opinion, the greatest living drummer ever and the nicest guy. I'm not going to say it again. From here on, I'm going to pretend you're not a drummer, you're not a musician, you're not anybody except a guy interviewing me, but I have to get that out front because otherwise I'll keep saying it throughout the interview. I just marvel and always am honored in your presence. So, but we're done with that. Well, no more.
Okay. I've just got to, I'm speechless and I can't.
We're done.
Enough. Done. I mean, otherwise I'm going to blush.
You're just an interviewer now to me.
I'm an interviewer now and I'm just going to blush and cry.
Yeah.
So did music, come to you or did you go to music? What made you want to be a musician? I'm going to start there.
Sure. And, now that my 2-year-old son is playing the drums, and we'll talk about that probably, and I see what I'm trying to do to inspire him. And then I realized that my father, who was a amateur piano player, that's not what he did for a living, but he was a really good stride piano player. And he was very patient with me. And I think he led me to the piano at a very early age, maybe age 3 or 4. And then I discovered that I had perfect pitch. And then so my parents was, oh, well, he's got something. So let's dig in. And it's a common story of, they didn't have any money, but somehow they found enough money to get me, 25-cent lessons at age 5. And also my father would come home, drag himself home from work and spend that time at the piano showing me stride things. And it was, invaluable. Didn't feel like it at the time, but it's proved to be invaluable.
Oh, absolutely. Did so after the stride, did you just jump right into classical?
I did. And it was a mandate from my parents. And I liked it for a while. And then I did it for 8 years, but there was always these things brewing. And I realized that the reason I really didn't like it was because I didn't like playing other people's music. And so to this day, if you and I are in a bar and somebody shouts out, hey, do whatever in the key, I can't do it because I have no repertoire really of other people's music because I preferred to write my own music, good and bad. So by age 13, I was pretty much done with the classical, but what a great training ground it was to give me that so that I could write for an orchestra and I could understand the orchestra. And I've used an orchestra on most of my records.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you probably got exposed to jazz playing as well, I'm sure. I mean, the stride obviously was an open door. You kick open for the jazz thing, I would imagine came later. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the jazz thing is funny. And I will reference you again because I had 2 great things happen more in my life musically while I was formulating. One was a great band teacher who allowed me to pick a different instrument every 3 months. And so in 3 months, I would play the clarinet, then the bassoon, and then the trombone, and then the baritone. And I never got really good at any of them, but it gave me a working knowledge of all the instruments. And even at 3 months, I was as good as the other kids, or maybe even a little better. Not great, but enough to have a working knowledge. So there was that. And then there was a friend of mine who indoctrinated me into the world of jazz, a great guy named Rick Reynolds, who was a really good bass player, upright bass player, hard to find in Victoria, British Columbia, where I grew up on an island. you ordered an album, you had to wait 3 months for it to come. But he sat me down every Saturday for, it seemed like years. And he would say, this is Bill Evans, this is Keith Jarrett, and this is Vince Guaraldi, and then he'd go deeper. This is Thelonious Monk, and this is Denny Zeitlin, and this is, and he would go deep, deep, deep to things that I really acquired my taste for jazz, and it's why I've loved jazz to this day. But here's the catch, and this requires no response from you. I loved it, I just wasn't good at it. And so I have a great understanding of it, but I realized early on, like the classical thing, I just wasn't going to be good enough. And so, but again, it gave me the opportunity to, with my buddies Jay and Bill, to write a song like After the Love Is Gone, which is sort of, it's Bill Evans' changes disguised. And so it gave me that foundation. And I have a great love of jazz. I just can't do it, but it's okay. I have enough.
Well,
I have enough.
Okay. I mean, you can say that about yourself, but I was going to get to After the Love Is Gone, one of the greatest songs ever written, especially in pop history. I mean, it's just a masterclass. It's a masterpiece. But, without getting ahead of myself, I think that the training that you had, because you're talking about the extent of the classical training that you had and the the jazz exposure and yada yada, and picking different instruments. It sounds to me that we're just talking about raw talent here, and a prodigious talent, because somehow all those things came together to the point where, I mean, we've played together quite a bit, and I've seen you on pretty hairy red light moments where your confidence is so unshakable, and it's what you play is so accurate, and you just read these things down
for the occasion, accurate for the occasion.
Well, but it's I've seen it on many occasions, and whenever the light goes on, you're just there. There's nothing. It's just immovable. There's no hint of anxiety. There's no hint of any kind of trepidation or it's just, you're going to do this and that's that. And so again, I kind of wanted to ease into this, but what I've seen is I want to know how you developed, or how that mindset came along, because I've worked with you many times as a producer.
Yeah.
You being a producer, and it's so you get the job done so efficiently that, like, for example, I remember one time we were doing a Michael Buble record out at your studio, and I was going to punch a part, and before I could even find the bar number, you guys were already there punching, and you're like, "Where were you?" And I thought I was fast.
Yeah.
You guys were already there. I mean, and so that whole ultra uber efficiency, and that mindset of you just being able to sort of, it's kind of like, it's almost like someone who either was brought up in a certain way, or someone who had training, like NLP training, or it's like Tony Robbins stuff. You know what I mean? Like, how do you cultivate that unflappable ability to just do stuff, bam, efficiently?
It's such a fantastic question, and it makes me want to think.
I've never seen anything like it.
Well, I appreciate that, and it makes me think deeply, and I can only attribute it to, excuse me, my upbringing. My parents were amazing, and they supported me. And my parents, I have six sisters, incredible sisters, all of them. My parents always made me feel special, and I guess that's a gift unto itself. Like, I don't want to go as far as to say you can do anything you want, you can, but they always made me feel special, which I guess translates to confidence. And I, probably like you, when we were kids, reading the back of album covers going, man, one day I'm going to sit in the studio with Hal Blaine. I'm going to know Larry Knechtel. I'm going to know these guys. I want to be one of them, because I think I'm good enough to be one of them. And so, the trajectory, that path just sort of gets a life of its own. In fact, when I'm giving little lectures at colleges, and universities, music classes.
Mm-hmm.
First thing I say is, I'm whining, I'm going sideways a little bit, but first thing I say is, anybody that puts up their hand and says, how can I be a record producer, is never going to be one. You can't ask the question, right? I never asked that of anybody. Did you ever ask anybody how you can be a drummer? Never. Did you ever ask anybody how you could do a podcast? Maybe the technical stuff, but no. It just one foot in front of the other, and the path is clear and the goalpost keeps moving. Always. You got to move the goalpost. Always.
Okay. So you, but as I recall, I mean, because you were in the session scene before I was, I mean, I didn't get to LA till I moved there in the spring of '78, and I was on the road for a couple of years with Frank Zappa, and I got to the point where I just thought, well, I can't get arrested, on my time off. I want to do other stuff, and I wanted to do dates. I wanted to be a studio player because, first of all, it was really about the idea of playing a lot of different kinds of music with a lot of different kinds, with a lot of different people, and documenting it. It was, to me, it really meant something special because it was going to be documented forever. And I liked a lot of different things. So I ended up starting doing that maybe in late '79, early '80. But you were I
was done by then. I was done.
Yeah. Although I remember I was lucky enough to be on some sessions where you came in. I think I'm trying to remember if it was I can't remember which record it was now, but I saw it a couple of times. And
maybe some Drill records, or
no, it was something that maybe it was Peter Allen or something. It could have been. Yeah, this was early on, like early '88.
Yeah, so I was producing and playing by then.
Right.
I always played on my own productions.
Okay.
But I only really did sessions from '76 to '79. And then but during those 3 years, they were, again, formidable because I looked through the glass, and I would see these producers, and I loved the good ones and I loved the bad ones for different reasons. The good ones, obviously, you can learn from, but I learned more from the bad ones. It's like, wow, that's dumb. Like, why would you ever do that? And I'm not a snob when it comes to producers. I think there's some great, great record producers that can't play an instrument, don't really know music, can't read music. That's fine. I don't care about that. I think that the only quality that you have to be a great record producer is you have to have a great love of music, and you have to have the people's taste. Other than that, it doesn't matter. The fact that I can play and write and arrange, do all that fancy stuff, that doesn't alone make me a great record producer. But the choices you make is what makes you a great record producer. So in those 3 years, when I was a studio musician, I learned a lot from the bad producers, the ones that were just like, they were useless. They were just useless.
Yeah. It taught you what not to do right away. And I'm sure you just had to sort of just say, okay, you're producing, I'm going to play, so I'm staying out of it, right?
For the most part. But then I was young and cocky, and I'm sure I got arrogant, but more than arrogant, I probably took over a lot of sessions, like if the producer would say, hey, do you want an intro? Yeah, I'll give you an intro. I mean, I'll give you whatever you want. And that's part of being a studio musician, right? You just give and give.
Yeah. I mean, there's famous stories about you saving songs like that. And, we need an intro called David Foster. We need someone to save this song called David Foster. So,
Well, what about Ray Parker? I mean, for a classic example of, hey, just play a little riff here. And it was, and he never got songwriting credit for it. And it became a huge thing,
But that was back in that time, and even earlier, it was sort of, that was happening a lot where, I mean, like the Wrecking Crew, Carol Kane, all these people were coming up with these little lines and hooky things that really became signature parts of the songs that they probably...
It was their job.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough thing. How do you deal with publishing with that? It's a tough area.
I have a question for you though, Vinny, because Frank Zappa has always fascinated me, and I did see him live once, and I believe Ralph Humphreys was playing drums with him, at that point, and George Duke. Was that before your time or after your time?
It was before me.
Before you.
Yeah.
So can you just briefly summarize, you probably talked about it ad nauseum on your podcast, but just summarize who he was and what kind of a musician he was?
He, honestly, and I've kind of come up with excuse me. To me, it was like it was like boot camp meets Juilliard meets Comedy Central. That's what it was, and
Wow.
and it was a whirlwind like that for 2.5 years that I did it, and he was really, again, one of those people that somehow really knew how to sort of, like a drill sergeant, but in a good way, because it really kept you on your toes. He would, we would rehearse for 8 hours a day for 3 months before we went on a tour. And, he would try things and then change them and try them and change them. And we would have to remember these revisions. And so it exercised that muscle and really got us paying attention in a lot of ways. And we had to read really well and all that sort of stuff.
Was it annoying at times?
No, it wasn't. It was, to me, it was like a big adventure,
Yeah.
So, because I loved it. I loved all that sort of thing. It was exciting. I wanted to just play and be challenged and just, push myself, and it just ticked all those boxes. And I liked it also because, he had that whole comedic satirical element to him that was really funny. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell what it was like. But
that's a thing I'd be jealous of, to have spent a little time with Frank, just to sit at his knees, at his feet, and just listen to him talk. Because I've seen interviews with him. He's like a professor, He
is, and he's a really smart guy, and and he was really into composing and being a serious composer, and I think that he may not have been recognized even posthumously as much as he probably should be, but he loved all that. He loved Edgar Varese and Stockhausen and Stravinsky, and what I mean. So those were like his heroes, and so yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell. But I want to just back to the whole producers thing, because so you talked about Frank, and you just reminded me of how he was very, very matter of fact, and boom, 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 got things done. And then I meet you, and I work with you, and it was the same thing. It was like very efficient, fast, well-oiled efficiency machine. So, and it's interesting because I would think to myself, well, I wonder why more producers can't do that, And I understand also the whole idea of, like, for me, when I started doing dates, it was just 1 2-inch machine, and the arranger was in the room, and everybody was in the same room, and time was money, and you had to read it and play it down and next. So, I got into reading and boom, 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 and, getting that muscle of coming up with the right part right away. And to the point where, I started traveling and doing sessions in other places, and I'd be like, where's the chart? And they're like, what do you mean, what chart? We're learning this. So I'm like, oh, I'm back into this whole thing of they're taking their time. And, over the years, I sort of saw the difference between those kind of situations where maybe you want to do that, because you've got this unmolded lump of clay, and other times where, you don't want to do that for the most part, because, this is not that kind of thing. You got to make decisions fast. And I think that I think a lot of the things that I saw was that there were producers who were kind of trying to do that sort of creative, let's just find something, and just beat it to death, when really, they went past it, way far past it, to the point where I would start thinking, you went way past it, you're burning us out. And you know what I mean?
Well, the efficiency thing, you've got me thinking now about my childhood.
Yeah.
As I've never, ever, ever thought about this before, or never discussed it with anybody. Not that it's private, but 7 kids, a working father, no money, but we weren't poor, sort of thing. Big treat once a month would be fish and chips. But we were given like, 1/3 of one piece of fish each. not because my parents were trying to starve us, it was just that's all that there was. And then my mother would maybe give me like another third, you know, and it's like maybe that efficiency that I learned as a kid from my parents, maybe that drifted into my record making world. But I'm not that guy, and never was, that wants excess on my tape. I say tape, it's not really tape now, but of course now with Pro Tools now, you can have as many tracks as you want. But I never was that guy who was like, hey, let's do 3 guitar solos and I'll pick later. No, we're going to figure it out right now. Let's try another drummer, a different approach, but I'll pick later. Never. I don't want to. I was lean and mean, always, like every single time. There's no excess fat on the tape. So, and that meant that sometimes I probably missed out on some cool stuff, right? But for the most part, 95% or 90%, I knew what I wanted. I got what I wanted, and I didn't need anything else. Making records is not a democracy. Sorry to say. It's just not.
Well said. Well said. And you know, did you miss out on stuff? Who knows? It's so hypothetical.
Yes.
And you know, because you can go the other way where, you know, I've seen, you know, when it was tape, like 30 reels of tape, you know, on one song, and as if they're going to pick the take out and go back and forth and go, oh, you know, put that other reel on. I think take 2 versus take 70. It wasn't going to happen. I can't see how.
Vinny, I will say about our dear friend, my dear friend, and your friend too, Jay Graydon was an exception. I think you probably worked for him, right?
Yeah.
Jay liked to beat the hell out of everybody. Yeah. We talked about it, laugh about it. Steve Lukather and Jay Graydon and I had dinner actually a couple of weeks ago, right before my surgery, and it was just so much fun, and we laughed about it. And he did beat everybody up, including me, because I was a piano player on those Al Jarreau records and the Man N Transfer, and I was a co-writer, but he was the producer. And he beat the hell out of us, but the results were so amazing. I didn't know half the time what he was looking for, but those records, I think anyway, are just...
Yeah. Well, he knew what he wanted.
Yeah, but
a big difference between someone who is really doesn't, and they're just kind of, you know, there's no they're going to tell the difference. When it was first possible to do any kind of sound on sound or punching in or overdubbing or fixing or any of that, the first people that apparently, I read this somewhere, that jumped on it were classical musicians. They couldn't wait. They couldn't wait to go.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I would have never thought that. I would have thought they would have been the ones to just top to bottom, right? You know?
Yeah.
But I was reading in some tape op magazine or one of those sort of, and they were citing examples where they would say, no, you know, it should be here, and I should detune this, and, you know, for this, this note should be, And I thought that really surprised me, because I would have.
Me too, but you know, those purists, geez.
Yeah, it is. Have you? I mean, you know, what was some of the most memorable things that you've done production wise that you really, really, really feel proud of? I mean, this is a tough one, because I think, you know, in your case, I have a feeling that it's, you know, it's always sort of, you just have an open mind and you just do your thing, and it's always at that level. But there's got to be something that's really dear to your heart in that regard.
I would say that it's again another great question. I would say that probably, in my opinion, the most perfect record, or close to perfect, that I produced was a song for Chicago called "Hard Habit to Break," and it's just, for me, I just thought that, you know, all the everything came together in that record with the drumming, and, you know, remember Danny Seraphin, of course, and I think Michael Landau played guitar, and maybe it was Michael Thompson. Gosh, I don't want to get that wrong. That record for me, but also there's those moments that stick out, like "I Will Always Love You" with Whitney, which, you know, I realize that has made an indelible mark on society, taking a little country tune and turning it all around, and having that in my head was kind of cool. My time with Earth, Wind, and Fire was absolutely invaluable. I mean, Maurice White, and I know you know those guys. Maurice was like a god to me, still is.
Yeah,
we miss a lot, right?
Yeah, no, I it was funny because I played on one track on Maurice's solo record, and I don't know how it came to my attention, but but I just went, oh yeah, and I was so honored by that. I went and bought the vinyl recently just so I could have the
Really?
record. Yeah, I wanted to have it as like that kind of hard memento of it. But yeah,
Yeah.
but carry on.
He was
Yeah, I mean Maurice.
he was a good drummer too.
Yeah,
He played
yes.
drums on Can't Hide Love,
He,
which is pretty astounding.
wow, I didn't know
Yes.
that.
Yes, he did.
Oh,
Ramsey Lewis thing that he had,
oh yeah.
And, production wise, Vinny, Maurice stands alone as the only producer. I never met Phil Spector, but Maurice to me stands alone.
Yeah.
The only record producer that the more stuff he puts on the track, the better it gets. The rest of us slobs try to cover it up. Like, oh, one more guitar part might help that. Oh, let's go add a tambourine. That's going to make it better for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right? And it doesn't.
Cowbell. Yeah.
Right. Maurice, listen to the extravagance and the luxuriousness of the overdubs that he puts on there with just the, 10 tracks of percussion and, again, no waste. He knew what he was doing. But the more he put on, the better those records got.
It's amazing. I listen to him over and over, and it's just probably my favorite band. They just make me feel good all the time.
Yeah, and
They can end a war.
Verdine is the bass player.
Forget
Picks
it.
notes that no other bass player would pick.
Amazing.
No other bass player would pick. Well, who does a major third against a minor chord? Like nobody. But Maurice told me, he said, "Hey, buddy, there's no wrong notes. There's just good notes and bad notes."
Amazing.
Right.
Amazing. Wow. So after the love is gone, you co-wrote that, right? Was that something that was, did it kind of come easy with the collaboration that you did, or was it sort of?
It's a funny enough story that I'll take 1 minute to tell it.
Yeah.
I was in Barry Gordy's office. Excuse me. And sorry, I should note for your listeners and your viewers that I just had back surgery 2.5 weeks ago, so I'm like squirming and coughing and blah blah blah. But
Doing great, man.
happy to be here. Anyway, I was in Barry Gordy's office, and I had just produced my very first record. An artist named J.P. Morgan. She was somewhat of a singer, but more of a TV personality. But nobody was asking me to produce, and she did. And we had like a $5,000 budget or something. Anyway, and I was hyping the record to him, playing him some songs. He was like, "Oh, I don't know, blah blah blah." He said, "Do you have any more songs?" And I was like, "Yeah, actually." And I went to the piano. May God kill me this second if I'm not telling the truth. I went to the piano without a notion of what I was going to play, and the entire chorus of "After the Love Is Gone" fell out.
Wow.
Even most of the lyrics, or at least the lyric line. I just went, "And oh, after the love," and Barry Gordy was like, "Holy jeez, what is that?" And then it turns out there was a friend of mine who got it to Maurice White, and well, of course I went to Jay Graydon and did the lyrics. Jay helped me with the rest of the song, and it was a great job.
That's like a legendary story. It's like
It's a gift.
magical stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it's legendary.
Through
Epic.
you, through you and not from you.
Yeah, it's epic.
Yeah.
Epic. Amazing. I have no idea. I mean, you.
And also sorry, before you ask your next question, that first album that I produced, again, this was a little before your time, otherwise you would have played on it for sure, but probably 1978. I got all the cats. I got Harvey Mason. I got Jeff Porcaro. I got David Hungate. I got all the cats.
Wow.
And I mistakenly had not learned enough about producing records, contrary to what I was saying about all I thought I had learned while watching the producers. But I thought that getting great tracks was making a great record. And of course it's not. That J.P. Morgan album is full of great tracks, but the songs weren't that good. And without great songs, you fail. So it was a very important lesson to me.
Turd polishing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, as session sausages, lunch meats, we did plenty of turd polishing, and yeah, it's all about the song. But I've seen records too where I remember. I mean, it's probably marketing and promotion. I remember doing this record. You remember Charlie Colello?
Sure, arranger.
Yeah. So we were doing this record with for Bill Medley from the Righteous Brothers, right? and it was a song, and I can't remember who wrote it, but it was, gosh, anyway, I don't want to misquote. It was a great song, right? And so Charlie was saying, we recorded the track and the track came out great. It was a great song. Bill sang it great, of course. And he goes, this record can't miss. It can't miss. You know, he was so confident. And guess what? And we thought, this is bona fide hit. I mean, wow, what a great song, you know. Not crickets.
Crickets.
Go figure. Why? You know, so
yeah.
But that's record company machinery and all that sort of stuff and how they time things and what they chose to promote. And it's you know, I've seen a lot of stuff like that where it's kind of sad where you think, yeah, this is really great. People are gonna love this, and nothing.
Yeah, especially when you apply all the same principles to your work that you did for 3 albums before that, and the last 3 albums were hits, and then you try it again. It's like it's a step. You're like, God, what did I do wrong? I did everything the way I've always done it.
Yeah. But you were talking, David, about, you know, just knowing what the people like. So as a producer, and so I mean, we often talk about that, like having your finger on the trigger and the temperature, but it's not really the same as second guessing. It's kind of an idea of what is the difference between second guessing them and just knowing what they like, and how does pleasing yourself fit into that? Like, there's so many people say, oh, you know, I've got to please myself first. And you know what I'm saying? How does that whole soup mix together, you know?
Yeah, I saw Rick Rubin say that in an interview just recently, that he makes records for himself. My answer is that I'm not an elitist. If I was a great jazz musician or a great classical player, I'd be so wrapped up in all that, I might not be able to think like the average person. Mm-hmm. The reason why I knew that Celine Dion was going to be a big star is when I first saw her in a tent singing in Quebec when she was like 18. I just looked at her and I went, millions of people are going to love this voice. I just know it. When I saw Buble bounce out at a wedding, when the shark bites, you know, this wedding singer, right? It's like, oh my God, the world stopped again. It's like, I know that millions of people are going to love this because that slot is available right now. Bobby Darin's dead. Sinatra doesn't make records anymore. Blah, 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 on and on the list. Mm-hmm. Buble can fill all those slots without being really any of them. So the fact that I feel I'm just the average Joe. I really do. I feel like I'm an average person when it comes to, you know, if I like it, millions of people are going to like it. And of course, I'm wrong a lot too, but.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if I had to look at the times you were wrong, it would take me a while to pick. I'd probably be picking till the cows come home. So, but it's an amazing ability to have, you know, where you have that kind of instinct and you know, okay. That's.
I think with Josh Groban though, Vinny, I found him in high school. Yeah. I think I just willed him to happen. I willed it to happen because the first album that I made with him, I fantasized in my head that I was making an Andrea Boccelli record because Andrea had gotten to a point where he didn't want to make records like that anymore. After him and I had worked together for quite a few years, and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna try and find somebody else that sort of sings like Andrea, and I'm gonna make the record that Andrea doesn't want to make, and I did, and it worked. You know, but I willed it by going to the record company. Said, you've got to put this record out now. You've got to do it. You've got to do it. You've got to do it. I just believed so hard that he was going to fill a slot.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And voila. Yeah.
Big star.
Yeah. The rest is history. That's amazing. I mean, I'm going to throw a curveball at you. And I know this might sound a little gauche, but do you ever stop for a moment and kind of just go, dig me? Or are you so in the frame that you can't see the picture?
I am probably like, well, I can't imagine that you would ever feel this way, but because of the way you play. But I feel some days that I've done nothing, that I've accomplished nothing. And other days I feel like I do exactly that. I stop and I go, all right, I have a legacy. But there's days when I feel like, you know, when I go to a party or something, you sit down and play the piano and, hey, play your hits, and I bang out like, 8 or 9 hits, and then I go, God, is that it? Is that my life? I mean, 50 years, and that's all I got to show for it. So I don't know if that's that insecurity that you need to be successful, or it's human nature, or I mean, I can't imagine there's 1 second when you ever didn't believe you were the greatest drummer ever. It couldn't be.
Well, I don't know about the greatest, but I will say this. I don't know if there is. I've had many bouts with insecurity myself. But one thing is that when I moved to LA, it was sort of like all bets were off. I didn't have a plan B. It was like, this is it, do or die. And so I believed in myself, but I knew that I had enough of a skill set to back it up. So,
Yeah.
And of course there's a lot of people that can play now, and there were a lot of people that can play then. There's never been a shortage of talent, intellect, or brawn, so, but still to make that kind of move, it's a pretty major thing. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, and I too have gone through many insecure moments, but I think, after a while, and it may be easier to say this later on in your career, but after a while, you just kind of let go and just whatever will happen will happen.
Yeah.
But
Can I ask you this, Vinny? Can I ask you who your musical influences were when you were, when we were talking about me at age 13, 10,
yeah,
15, 18? Were they drummers, or were they piano players, or were they both?
it was songs and in idioms like it was Beatles and Motown pretty much. Actually, before that, when I was little, I was listening to pop radio, like, Bobby Darin and those people, and just like reacting to music. But really, when I was a kid, I remember seeing the Beatles, and that was it. Ringo,
Yeah.
love Ringo. To this day, I love Ringo.
He loves you too.
Yeah, and the Beatles are it for me. So
Me too.
yeah, there you go. And
But why not jazz? Where did this
well,
jazz?
that came later. That came later when I was in around 7th grade, and I started taking lessons. And there was a good music program, and these band directors and people that were involved, they were kind of like jazz bows, And so my friends that I met as well introduced me to it. And one of the first things that I listened to was organ groups. For some reason, it was really kind of big, and I listened to that, and I was listening to small, and then big bands. Yeah, because
Buddy Rich and
yes,
Thad Lewis or Thad Jones.
yeah,
Well,
all of them, and I even went to some these clinic camps where those bands were, and the personnel were giving clinics, and so all of them, Stan Kenton, Maynard Ferguson, everybody, and Buddy, and then I found out about Miles later, a little later, but it was like Charlie Parker. So by the time I'd gone through junior high and high school, I was pretty ensconced in jazz, but I also loved rock and roll. Like, I loved Zeppelin. I loved all of it, every bit of it. But really, I think the earliest stuff was the Beatles and Motown, and a lot of R&B and soul music that was on the radio were some of my earliest influences, and it just kind of branched out from that. So,
are you pretty jazz literate?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But why is it, thinking about somebody like you, why is it that as amazing as you are, that you can't play like John Bonham? And you can't, I know you can imitate, you can't really play like him, and you can't play like the drummer in church. Why is that?
That's one of
You
those.
get close, but you can't actually do it the way they do it.
It's just their personalities. I think. Here's the thing, though. I think that nowadays, I'm going out on a limb saying this because I've been saying this. I've said this before, but things are a little bit more homogenous, and sometimes it's harder for me to tell people apart. Whereas back then, I could tell everybody apart, and I can't. That's one of the big mysteries to me, is I could hear, like, Gad, Jeff, Harvey, Kellner, all of them playing the same simple beat,
Uh-huh.
the same simple 4/4 beat,
Yeah.
and I could tell them apart instantly. So how does that work? You know,
Yeah.
but it does. And for that matter, I can imitate. We can imitate each other, but it's just people's personalities come out so strong. And when Bonham, when he passed away, I had so much respect that Zeppelin said, "This is it, no more," because he was such an integral part. It's like, whereas now it's a little more corporate. It's like, oh, so and so died. I'll get somebody, and as long as we got the front man, we're good. And,
Yeah.
and we got sponsors, so whatever.
Yeah.
It's kind of feels that way to me now. And but that's
Yeah.
a great question. In the same.
I mean, it's not a diss question. It's a fact. It's just,
Yeah.
but like, I can't play like David Page. I can imitate him, but I can't play like him.
Yeah, we just all have our own. That's the beauty of our own voices, I mean, we've all been
Yeah.
imitated and trying to imitate other people, and I think that's good. Like, I've tried to imitate all these people, and I learned from it, and
Yeah.
somehow you can integrate the best parts. Or you integrate what you love about them without sounding like them. Like, and I could say, well, here's what I got from such and such. Here's what I got from such and such, and this guy and that guy. Like Harvey, for example, I always thought that he had an amazing, nuanced hi-hat touch in the way he integrated the hi-hat. Same for Gadsden. And just focusing on that one element alone,
And then what about Jeff? We should give him a little shout out.
he had the most amazing time feel all across the board. And that's another mystery. It's like, it's just, to me, that's their spirit coming out. And his heart was as big as LA, I mean, he had the
Yeah.
biggest heart, and it showed in his playing. As it was just, I mean, there will never be another like him. And, to me,
He never got to see the stuff that I got to see either, from playing on probably hundreds of sessions with him where he just do 2 takes and he'd walk. Literally, he would walk,
wow,
including the J.P. Morgan album.
no kidding.
Just walk.
Because he knew he got it. It's like,
Right.
we're done. We're done. And
Yeah.
right on.
But you work for the producer. You're not the producer. You're the drummer.
I know. I
don't-
know. But you know what? Maybe he thought he was showing them something because he knew, who knows, But if you were producing, then okay, maybe you would think, wait, hang on, Jeff, where you going,
Yeah.
It must have been hilarious or infuriating. I don't know which one.
Yeah, well, a little bit of both. A little bit of both, but it kept you on your toes.
Yeah. That's hilarious, man. Yeah, I mean, wow. I mean, I was going to ask you something. Now I got off track because I was talking about myself. But
Well, I'd like to pull you back and forth, a little
there's
bit.
so much, that I can. I mean, when you're talking about, I sat down and at the piano and I thought, I played my 8 or 9 hits. And thought, is this all I got? No, you just had a memory lapse. I mean, it's vast. The body of work that you did is so vast that.
But it's, I'm not included in a lot of conversations of when they talk about the great record producers. I mean, there's just so many, like George Martin and,
I find that hard to believe. I do.
That's just my insecurities.
I think so. You're Mount Rushmore, definitely.
I've taken a new challenge on, which I don't know if you and I talked about when we worked together recently, but I wrote a Broadway musical, and we opened.
I didn't know this.
So, called Boop, Betty Boop, and it's going to open on Broadway in 2025, so in a year.
Great.
And great experience, and we had a great run in Chicago. Learned a lot. We're tweaking. We're writing a couple of new songs, and it's been an amazing process. A crappy process as well, because like I told you, making records is a dictatorship. I mean, it's not a democracy, but a little Freudian slip. But doing a Broadway play, you're the man on the totem pole and you're the composer. So, I mean, the director he's in charge. So it was a little bit of an adjustment for me, but it's been a great experience for me.
And it's called Boop, you said?
Boop. Boop,
Betty Boop?
Yeah, a Betty Boop, yeah.
Amazing. So speaking of which, the director of, had you ever, I'm saying Elmo's Fire, but did you ever consider pursuing more movie soundtracks or was that something that just was kind of, ancillary or incidental to you?
Um, I did pursue it for a bit. St. Elmo's Fire. That was the first movie I scored, and I remember clearly. I had never done it before, so I had no clue what I was doing. But I come up with that little dun 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 dun, and I realized that it could work slow and fast and medium. And I thought, I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Can I use that more than once in the movie? So I called Tom Scott, who I love, who was so nice to me when I first moved to LA. Out of people that were not nice, but he was so great, not knowing anything about me. And he said, "Man, if you found a melody that works throughout the movie, you're way ahead of the game." And he was right. So that movie did well, and the album sold a couple of million, and had the hit songs from it, and including my own instrumental hit, and the movie was a hit. Then I did a movie called Secret of My Success. I thought, hey, this is pretty easy. And it was okay, but it wasn't great. Then I did about 3 movies that were truly not great, and that's when I realized that I would rather write songs for movies than score them, for 2 reasons. One, I wasn't that good at scoring. I got lucky with St. Elmo's Fire. But 2, and more importantly, people that write songs for a movie get a lot more credit than people that score movies, for the most part, unless you're Hans Zimmer or John Williams. And so writing a song for a movie, you get a bigger bang for your buck. So I've written a lot of songs for movies, but the scoring stopped.
Very, wow. Okay.
Yeah, efficient. Right?
Yeah, I was just about to say that again. You efficient, pow. And so, how did you cultivate your business sensibilities about that sort of thing? I mean, because when you just come into that and you're into that world, there's a lot to learn. For me, as a sideman, I didn't have to think about publishing contracts and all that sort of. It gets kind of hairy, and or is it something that you just found trusted people that you could work with that you could trust that did all that for you? I mean,
yeah, I would admit to you that that for a lot of my life, I enjoyed hanging out with successful people that weren't in the music business more than successful people that were in the music business. I found them more stimulating to me because I already sort of had the music thing covered. So I'm not really going to learn anything from another piano player. I could maybe learn something, but so I always was more stimulated by sitting with somebody like Bill Gates or something like that if I had the chance than another piano player or a guitar player. And I regret it now a little bit because when I was at dinner with Jay Graydon and Steve Lukather the other night, and I realized that they had kept up their friendship for all these years. And I was like an outsider at the dinner because I hadn't kept up my friendship with them, even though I was close to them in the 80s. And I was a little bit disappointed in myself that I hadn't spent more time with the people that I really grew up with, But, having said that, it is what it is now.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, if you're reconnecting, it's a good thing. And sometimes a lot of great friendships are like you just pick up right where you left off,
And Steve Lukather, God, I mean, I came across him when he was 17, and he was just, as you know, a beast. And we wrote Talk to You Later for the Tubes. We wrote She's a Beauty for the Tubes.
I love that record.
Yeah, and he played on a lot of that record. He played the solo on Hard to Say I'm Sorry, which was a #1 record for Chicago.
Yeah.
He played the solo by Alice Cooper, top 10 single. He was a big, big help to me. I mean, he was somebody that would just come in and on a tear. And I assume it's still that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it must have been a kick working with the Tubes. It had to be.
It was great. And you probably know those guys, or do you? Do you know Fee?
I don't know them, but I met them once on a gig that I was on with them. Yeah.
Yeah. It's I've never been that great with bands, although I've had a lot of success with bands like Chicago and Earth, Wind and Fire and the Tubes. But, every band has its weak and strong players. And again, efficiency. It's like, I don't want to sit here for 4 hours when you can't play the part. I'm just going to get somebody that can. And that, of course, is annoying to a band. And so half the Tubes loved me and half of them hated me. And the same with Chicago. But again, the results are the results.
Yeah. It is what it is. Yeah, I understand.
I know why Chicago was pissed off. I get it, because I changed their sound. They were at an all-time low when I came along, and Peter Cetera and I, we locked well. We wrote all the songs. I played bass on everything. I played keyboards on everything, and it just sort of took over like an arrogant young little prick, and it was a dictatorship. And I get why to this day they're pissed off. They like the fact they still have a career with those songs, but I completely understand why they're not really that happy with me.
Well, yeah, it's a tough thing to say, yeah, because it's efficiency, but then you got those songs, and
Yeah.
the rest is history. And yeah, I'm not going to touch that one, but I'll accept what
Move
you're
on.
saying with grace.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I hear you loud and clear. But yeah, it's bands, boy. Yeah, that's a weird one. I mean, I've ghosted on stuff and had to come in, and oh man, it's
And then you meet the drummer, like,
yeah. Oh
hey,
God.
my record.
Yeah. It's kind of heart wrenching, and but we've all been replaced and replaced other people, and
Sure.
what?
Yeah, I mean, Robbie Buchanan used to love to tell me that he replaced my piano part on the intro of Just Once for James Ingram. What? I always thought that was me. I made it.
No, I did that, man. It's so funny. Hey,
I'm
going to throw you a curveball here. I mean, this is, I know, a cliche question, like, what would you tell a young musician now? But seriously, in this day and age, with the way things have changed so much, I mean, if somebody came up to you and said, Mr. Foster, I want to be a musician, what would you give me as advice? What should I do?
Well, if he ever said, I want to be a musician, how can I be? I'd tell him you'll never will be, if he asked that question. But I know what you're saying is like, what can I do to get into the biz or whatever? It's probably the same advice you would give, is that, knowledge is power. And if you're going from the bedroom to the stage with your computer, it's fine and it can work. Again, because to be a great record producer, as I said, you only have to have a great love of music, in my opinion, and think like the common man. So that's why these producers, young producers, come along and they get a 5-year bite at the apple without really playing anything, and they're just all about their computer and sounds, and and it works, and it's great. But imagine how much more fulfilled they'd be if they could actually play piano or play guitar, or have a working knowledge of every instrument, and really like hone out those skills. That for sure is missing these days, which is why music, top 40 is maybe a little less evolved than it was 20 or 30 years ago. But I'm not that guy also that, and I'm riffing now, but I'm not that guy that hates the music business. I think the music business is great right now. If you talk to, Beyonce or Taylor Swift or Ed Sheeran or Drake, Bruno Mars, they think the music business is just perfect. They're just really happy with it.
Yeah.
And this shit.
Of course but they're in the top 1%. You know what I mean? It's like, what about a kid that goes, well, like, how am I gonna really? For anybody else, it's like, it's probably about marketing and just having some kind of raw talent or developed talent that will be able to withstand the marketing hype. But other than that, it's like, well, we sell merchandise. Let's see, if I tour, okay, I can make money touring. But what about people who don't want to tour? They become DJs, okay, or like, it almost seems like it's so intangible now with all this streaming, and people not getting money directly from streaming or getting very little, that there's just has to be these multiple income streams just in order to that maybe 20 years ago nobody would have thought about doing.
Yeah,
it's like you buy a record and I get paid. That's
it's a strange time, but it's the only thing that is constant is change.
Yeah,
it's constant, and we've seen it our whole lives, and we're still surviving.
Yeah, all right, there you go. And on that note, your 2-year-old son Rennie is a phenomenon. And for those of you who haven't seen him, you're going to see him soon, because
Yep.
I've never seen a 2-year-old like this in my life. This is unbelievable. I mean, we're talking about, forget about just playing in time. I mean, he's got a groove. And then when he plays fills, he's not just going do 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 do. Do.
Landing.
He'll play the syncopation.
Yeah.
Got out,
Yeah.
you know, just he thinks of that. So his sense of all of that, the space, and it's amazing. It's astounding. I said by the time he's 5, he's going to take over the world. You know.
Well, but interestingly, and you're right, because the thing that impresses me most about that particular video is the thought process. It's not the fact that he's playing the group, that's all great, all that, but the fact that he's sort of seeing the end of the song.
Yeah.
You know, parts it, and the way he understands the job of a drummer.
Yes. Yes, the bigger picture and the role and the music and integrating himself into the music, all of that. Those are things that oftentimes don't come to years later. A lot of people never cultivate. Because
it's funny, you know, Clive Davis has his annual pre-Grammy party, which is a big applaud for your viewers that maybe don't know. It's the night before the Grammys, but it's like everybody that's nominated goes. It's you turn to your left and there's Rihanna, and you turn to your right, there's Beyonce, and you look straight ahead and it's Joni. It's like just a stargazing night, right?
Yeah.
Clive Davis has reached out to me, and in all seriousness, he said, and I'll read it to you. Hang on, if I may. This just really, really cracked me up. Hi, David. I hope this finds you well. I would like for Rennie to perform a duet with Sheila E. at my party. Can you make this happen?
Oh,
Definitely.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that is so.
I mean,
that's so good.
Isn't that funny? I mean, I'm not going to let that happen because for many reasons, but also because he's too unpredictable. In fact, he hasn't played that consistently since that video, and that video was a month and a half ago. He now, when he plays, he tries to play the melody to songs instead of playing the groove, and I don't understand what that is.
Maybe he'll be a pianist or something else.
Yeah, maybe. But so, like, I get him to play Santa Baby because I've taught him how to go.
Yeah.
Right, and he'll start out with the swing groove, and then he'll go, and he starts playing the melody on the drums instead of the groove. I don't know if that's progress or regress.
I think it's pretty cool. It's
not a groove though. I don't know.
Yeah, he's going into his avant-garde thing now. He's getting melodic. Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, he's 2, so it's like, it's insane. I know. It's just really exciting. I mean, you've got to be over the moon. It's like, that's a whole thing, the nature versus nurture, and apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And I mean, I think that at the end of the day, look, I mean, we can be whatever we want, but I'm not going to be Michael Jordan. Like, I mean, there's got to be a limit on that. But at the same time, it's like people will say, well, you if you work hard enough at it, yes, but you can't demean the role of raw talent, in my opinion. It's like,
no, lions don't give birth to fish.
There you go. And his last name is Foster, so there you go.
We'll see. It's fun and
yeah, it's great
fun for me.
Yeah,
I wish it was piano so I could teach him. But I can't teach him anything on the drums. He's learned it all by just watching JR, who on the road.
Yeah.
Neil Peart. He watches Neil Peart videos. I've shown him your video of you're on the list too, of playing the Buddy Rich thing. It's you and is it Weckl and
Steve Gadd?
Yeah, I've shown him that video a few times.
Cool.
And he's kind of into Neil Peart is his guy. That's his guy.
Great. Awesome. That's so great, man. Well, I mean, we can go on and on. I just want to, David, I want to thank you for your time and just, for your camaraderie and your friendship over the years and your support, and just, I'm honored to call you friend as well. And,
likewise, man, my wife said to me, by the way, how is Miriam? Is she good?
She's doing well. Thank you. Thank you for asking. She says a big hello, and saying that
my wife said to me today, she said, gosh, you really want to do this? You just had surgery and you're not feeling that good. I said, I'm honored and I'd do anything for Vinny. And I really mean that, man. I'm so happy to be on your show, and I hope you'll have me back again.
I love it, David. And, whatever I can do for you, I'm at your service. And please tell Catherine, thank you for lending you to me.
I will, you buddy.
Yes.
All right, man, Thanks, man.
Yeah, and thank everybody. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you, the great David Foster, for this being on this episode. And
Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for the next episode of Breakfast with Vinny.